Hello and welcome to the Serious About Rugby League show. I'm Will Jackson. Joining me today is Peter Smith of the Yorkshire Evening Post, and we've got the two Sams, Sam Brocksom and Sam Cook, who will be Sam B and Sam C for the duration of this podcast. We missed last week, but we're back. We've had a bit of news over the last few days. Obviously, a busy day today as well in terms of fixtures. Just before we get into those, though, can I just ask you to like this video and subscribe to the channel? We're also looking for a sponsor for this show, so if that's something that you'd be interested in, I'll make sure my email address is in the description of this video, and it's also on the website as well, so please do get in touch. So yeah, it's been a busy day. The Super League fixtures were announced this morning. You won't be surprised to hear that everyone plays each other home and away, with the exception of Magic Weekend. Sam B, winners and losers, what's your thoughts coming off this morning's announcement?
Yeah, I mean, we got the opening round the other day, and I think there's some good clashes in there. But I think in terms of winners and losers, I think one team that will definitely be on the favoured side is Leigh Rhinos, because I think they've got a bit of a tough start with Leigh and Hull KR in Las Vegas, but I think other than that, they've got a quite balanced fixture list. They've got Hull FC to finish the season, which could be a playoff clash depending on how well Hull FC do this year. But yeah, I think the top 40 or teams in the top three, should I say, Leigh, Hull KR and Wigan, their games are quite well spread out for Leeds. I think in terms of losers, you can only really look at York and maybe Saints. Saints on paper don't have a bad start compared to if you go on 2024 league position, but they've got Warrington away, Leigh, and then Catalans away. So they're three really big games under Paul Rowley, especially because it's his first couple of games in charge. But yeah, and then just mentioning York, they've got 6 quite tough games to start the year. Then it's their first year in the top flight. They've got KR, Leeds, Hull FC, Warrington, Wigan, and then Wakefield, all in the same run. So yeah, welcome to Super League York Knights.
Yeah, Sam C, do you feel like York really couldn't have asked for a tougher welcome to Super League, and in some respects, do you think they'll almost relish that?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Roger Jones, the CEO of RL Commercial, the other day was saying in reference specifically to the opening round is that you've got to play Hull KR at some point. You've got to play everyone home and away. So why not get one of the perceived tougher games on paper out of the way first? I think he kind of made the point that could Hull KR potentially be looking at the World Club Challenge a week ahead. So can York maybe spring it up? So I think you, as a promoted team, particularly as York and Toulouse, who we know that are going to be on half the funding of Bradford, it's going to be a really difficult season. So I think they're going to have to look at and try and make the home ground a fortress. So doing so, opening night, Super League, home game, all eyes are on them for the first game in the competition. I think that's something that they can really embrace. And I think they've set about building a good squad based on obviously how short a period they've had to do so. So I think, yeah, they'll probably relish it. And I think then they've got to also look at, and there's a period later in the season where they have quite a run of quite favourable fixtures as well. So I think accept the tough start and then potentially, know that they're going to have far easier runs at other times as well. But I think it probably just gives them a real sense of what Super League's like, obviously. So I think if they're just competitive in some of those games, then I think it's a real positive sign. But obviously, we saw last year Huddersfield, who ended with 7 wins, they didn't win till I think round 10 at Magic Weekend. So it doesn't. You can still do okay on the season with a poor start. So I think they just need to embrace it, really.
Yeah, well, as I say, we've got the return of Magic Weekend. I must admit, I thought it was a bit of a tired concept last year. Going back to Newcastle, it felt very like we've been there, done it before a million times. Going to Everton, it freshens it up. It gives it a breath of fresh air, really, I think. Pete, are you glad to see it go to Everton? I know obviously we've been there, so sorry, phone ringing. I know we've been there. Look, are you happy to see it go to Everton? I know the donuts are there as well, so is that a good thing for you?
I was going to mention the donuts. Well, yeah, we actually got Ash's donuts at Everton in the media room before the match, which made it very popular with all the media, which is why so many people in the press have been saying they're delighted for it to go to Everton. I personally think Newcastle is the ideal home for Magic. That said, Everton is a really good venue for rugby league, or it certainly was for the Ashes test. Good sight lines, very atmospheric. Few problems for people getting there, but this was very early in the stadium's life. I would imagine by next July things will settle down a little bit and they'll probably find out some of those creases. There's obviously not going to be a 52,000 crowd in the stadium. It's probably going to be about half that. But it's a chance for people who maybe couldn't get tickets for the test to get there. It's reasonably accessible from most of the rugby league heartlands. The not too far for any fans to travel. Hull and Hull KR have got a bit of a trek, but other than that, it's okay. It's a couple of hours away from just about everybody, and it's still going to be a new experience for a lot of fans. So I think people will get behind it and support it. I'm not sure about the fixtures. The RFL seem obsessed by derbies. They've brought derbies back this year, and they seem to think that that's what the fans want. I'm not sure if it is, and it obviously favours some teams over others. I think Leeds have Bradford Bulls as their loop fixture at Magic this year. You have to say that's not a bad draw for them, whereas someone like Hull, who would, I imagine, fancy their chances of sort of pressing Leeds for a top four spot, have to play Hull KR. So that's harder. It is another loop fixture, which we wanted to get rid of. That was the point of going to 14 teams. And not every club is involved this year, which is different to previous years, because Catalans and Toulouse are having their own Magic weekend or Magic Day in the south of France at a neutral venue. That's yet to be arranged. But I think it's something a little bit different, isn't it? The RFL are talking about putting the Magic back in Magic. It probably did need a tweak or two, and we'll just see how it goes. But one of the problems with its position in the calendar, and this was the ideal date, the RFL say, is Castleford play Wakefield at Magic, and I think it's the same for Saints and Wigan, and then they meet again in Rivals round at the end of the month. So that's 2 games inside a month, and I think that should be avoided. But other than that, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah, can you just remind me of the score the last time Leeds played Bradford in a competitive game?
No.
Sam B, are you happy to see it? Are you happy to see that the derbies return, that concept?
Yeah, I think just touching on what Pete mentioned there, I think the derbies definitely attracts more fans, whether it, is better for the integrity of the competition. As Pete said, Leeds get Bradford and, Saints get Wigan, so it's a bit of a mismatch there. But yeah, I think the Magic, if it was to return, it had to be derbies. I think people didn't like the concept if it was seeded, because you've got the chance to go, on an away day to play Hull and Hull KR, or you can play Hull and Catalan. There's a big difference in, fan interest in those 2 matches. But yeah, and again, like Pete said, transport wasn't great for the Ashes. I went as a fan and it wasn't too good, but yeah, hopefully if they can sort that out, yeah, it'll be a good 2 days for rugby league.
I'm not sure. Yeah, not sure I agree about the derbies. I think people will go or they won't go. And I'm not sure that people particularly look at the fixture list. I think it's Magic Weekend. Are we going to go to Magic Weekend? Not, are we going to watch Leeds play Bradford or Wakey play Cass or whatever? But the RFL seem to think that it's derbies that will pull in the crowds. When you've got already got the rivals round and later that month, I think it's a little bit unbalanced. We want to get rid of loop fixtures. Nobody wants to see teams playing each other umpteen times in a season. Leeds playing Bradford in pre-season as well. So there's at least 4 times they're going to meet, and I think that's too much.
Yeah, it should be said.
Fans, people watching this show, think whether they want to see derbies or whether they'd rather see different opposition.
Yeah, it should be said. I mean, let us know in the comments by all means. It should be said that I think the clubs were very keen. I think they were the driving force behind the return of Magic Weekend for another year. It's obviously pretty lucrative for them in terms of the tickets they can sell, but also the shirt sales and whatever else. Magic does come as a trade-off for an 8-team playoff structure, which had been proposed. 7 teams was proposed and talked about as well, but we're here with 6 teams now. Sam C, is that a sensible call?
Yeah, I think so. I think 8 teams in a 14-team league is embarrassing, to be honest with you. I think you can't finish bottom half of the league and make the playoffs. So I think 6 teams makes sense. I can understand why you'd potentially have 7, because it would prioritise the League Leaders' Shield. It kind of would put some emphasis on it, because you wouldn't just obviously get the trophy, but you'd be the one team to progress automatically to the semi-finals, with obviously second playing 7th, 3rd, 6th and 4th, 5th, etc. So I think 7 teams as an option, I think it was definitely worth considering, and I would have liked to see it, but I think it was kind of referenced that there was a media meeting the other day with Roger Jones of our commercial, and he kind of just said that there was no strong pull anywhere. They obviously, this idea of having Magic meant that they had to trade off with not having an 18 playoff, but then there wasn't a particular strong argument for what it should be, and that's kind of left them at 6. He also referenced the fact that we've had some really good playoff series recently, and I think you can't disagree with that. So minimising it to 6 means we're going to get the best teams. It also means that good teams are going to miss out. We saw Hull FC miss out last year. Warrington are a big club, I say. Not necessarily a great team last year, but it means that it's going to be really competitive again, and I think that's what you want. So I don't have any issue with it. I think sometimes we try and change things for the sake of changing things, and I think it works. So let's leave it.
Yeah. Another thing we found out this week is that there'll be no mid-season break for an international game. Sean Wayne, if he is to be the coach, made a point of that. He wanted a game there in mid-season, but that's not going to be the case. Pete, is that how do you feel about that? Obviously, it just means that whoever the coach is going to be taking his team into the World Cup, having hardly seen them all year.
Well, we saw what happened this autumn, didn't we? The 3-0 drubbing by Australia in the Ashes. Preparation's going to be similar for the World Cup. There'll be a similar outcome. If England lose to, I think, do they play Tonga in their opening game? They lose that, they're not going to make the semi-finals of the World Cup. It's going to be another disaster. And this time next year, if we're all still around, we'll be talking about what went wrong in the World Cup and how we can put it right. And one way to put it right is to give England better preparation, and not having a mid-season match is not good preparation. Rodri also mentioned that there are no plans for mid-season meetings at this stage among the players, although he hinted that was possible. It's ludicrous, in my opinion. We're sending England into a World Cup with one hand tied behind the back. That was actually put to Rodri in the media briefing. Someone said, do England have a hand tied behind their back? He said no, obviously, as he he would do, but it's clear that they do. Rodri's argument was that it's up to the players to provide intense games week in, week out to prepare the England squad for the World Cup. But on the other hand, we've gone to 14 clubs this year, haven't we? And 2 of those are getting half the funding of everybody else. There are going to be games this year that aren't competitive, and again, that's not going to help England. I think we should, as a sport, we should be doing everything we can to maximise England's chances in the World Cup, and we're not doing that. The RFL made a conscious effort to support Hull KR in the World Club Challenge, which I think is right. They effectively said to Hull KR, from what I can tell, they said to Hull KR, you can choose who you want to play in your first game. And Hull KR said they wanted another promoted club, so they've got York Knights away. People have mixed opinions about that, but I think it's right that Super League throws its weight behind the English team, whoever they are, in the World Club Challenge, and I just wish they'd do it behind the England team in the World Cup. We're not doing that. We're going to have the same outcome as we had in the Ashes. It's repeating the same things and expecting a different outcome, and there won't be a different outcome.
Yeah, Sam B, is this self-interest from clubs then as well at the same time? I know, speaking a couple of weeks ago, you said the RFL needs to put England first. You still stand by that, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And I mean, it was pretty obvious what they had to do. Jason Demishu, PNG head coach, said the other week that he wanted a mid-season test against England. Sean Wayne said that he wanted a mid-season test. The signs were there to have it. It's just not come to fruition. But yeah, I mean, it's the case of, would you rather have Magic Weekend or a warm-up game for the World Cup? And I think for clubs, it's Magic Weekend. But yeah, you've then got the problem of, I'm not saying they're going to make the squad, but you've got the problem of Lewis Martin, Harry Robertson, people like that who've never played for England, then going into a game against Tonga in the opening game of the World Cup, who are full of NRL stars, and it's just going to be, well, a bit of a mismatch, really. So yeah, I think it's a bit of self-interest. Yeah, I think I stand by what I said the other week. I think the RFL just needs to take a bit of a foothold on the English international game and just kind of put them first, at least for the next few years, just so that we can start to improve.
Yeah, just talking about one England international who's been in the news over the last few days, Harry Newman potentially going to Perth Bears. Pete, discuss.
I think Harry had a good season for Leeds, ever present for the first time this year, particularly in the second half of the campaign. He went well. He would be a loss for Leeds. I know he's a bit of a divisive sort of character among fans of the game in general. A lot of players think he's got an attitude problem. I just think he wants to win. He cares passionately about the game. I've spoken to him numerous times and get on well with him. I think he's a decent lad and he's a good player. And I don't think he's ever really made any secret of the fact he'd like to test himself at the highest level. We've not had any confirmation about the move, but I would imagine that it's certainly on the cards. He's out of contract at the end of next season. It's a fantastic opportunity for him, and nobody could blame him for going to the NRL if the opportunity does arise. And he will be playing in a higher standard of competition from 2027 onwards, and that is going to help the England team going forward because Harry's a sort of an integral member of that. Big loss for Leeds. Leeds do have some good young kids coming through, though. Several in that position. People like Ned McCormack, Max Simpson, and one or two who've already had a taste of Super League, one or two at the younger end who haven't yet but are knocking on the door. So it's a circle of life, isn't it? If he moves on, good luck to him. And I hope he makes the most of his opportunity in the NRL. I think if he has his head switched on, he's more than capable of doing well over there.
Yeah, well, I was just about to ask that. I mean, people are going to react how they're going to react to that news, but how do you think he will do out there? Do you think he's the type that can rise to the challenge?
Don't see why not. He's a quality player. He's an established England international now. But it's up to him, isn't it? If he goes over there, obviously it's a higher standard. He'll have to be on his game every single week. His behaviour will be closely monitored by the media as well as clubs. He'll have to up his game, but I think he's capable of doing that. He's a talented player. I rate him as a youngish English centre, and I'll be interested to see how he goes over there. But as I say, it's up to him. He has to go with the right approach and knuckle down. And if he does that, yeah, he's more than capable.
Yeah, Sam, see, I mean, this might be the first of a few players going over to the NRL in the next few years. Obviously, with Perth Bears coming in and the new PNG team. Is Harry Newman going over to Perth? Is that a warning sign for those clubs maybe that have, key men approaching the last year of their deals or last couple of years of their deals?
Yeah, I think so. I think teams have got to be wary. I think you've seen it already with a few teams. I think Wigan and Hull KR especially have kind of had more of a flurry of, especially Wigan, a flurry of retainment rather than recruitment, and it's on long deals as well. I think in Sembers, I think he's around 2030. I think KR have done Lytton to around 29 or something. There's quite a lot of those sort of deals, and I think it makes sense to do that because you want to safeguard yourself against any NRL acquisitions. But I think also for players, I think now it kind of gives players a little bit of power because they know that there's an extra sort of market for them. And you do see some NRL teams, I'm thinking Canberra especially, kind of become like Little England over there. You get quite a few players. So Perth potentially, if they maybe look for another, then to go alongside Newman, then you can potentially see that as almost like a hub for English talent in the NRL. And I think players will then be more. I think a lot of players are open to going to the NRL to prove themselves anyway, but that would maybe feel more homely potentially if you're going to have players in the camp that you know. And I think it gives players the sort of power to go to their own clubs and be like, well, look, I've got this opportunity, and what can you offer me to make it? And I think you need the players to have power because without them, then we don't have the game. What I do think though is we need a salary cap rise. I think we're trying to compete with the NRL, and we've not had one for some time. Nigel Wood spoken to the BBC recently saying that he doesn't believe that's why the NRL's on a greater level. I think that's nonsense, really. I think you don't have to impose minimum spending limits. Certain teams will still spend well under the cap, but for the teams at the top who do want to safeguard the talent, then they should have the right to do so without being absolutely strangled by a cap that's not risen whilst cost of living prices have skyrocketed. So I just think that's a bit of a I think that's just a strange thing. I don't really understand why. Everyone knows that Super League clubs don't make much money. There are issues financially with the sport, but I don't think raising the cap is going to burst the bubble and bring it all falling down. I think it arguably means that we have a stronger product. We can keep English players here, and then also it wouldn't stop English players leaving, and that's fine. But I think something needs to be done in that aspect because I think it's a bit we're just outdated. We're behind the times, and I think the NRL are close to 3 times the cap. They've got all the assets, all the talent. Why would you not want to go there if you're an English player? Which again is a positive for the English team because you're playing competitive games, but what is Super League going to look like in 10, 15 years if we just have such a drain on talent? I don't know.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I think I completely agree with you about raising the cap. And there's no one's forcing teams to spend money they don't have. It's all their own prerogative. But I completely agree with you. Pete, Leeds have brought a player over from the NRL, Danny Levi. Tell us about him.
Hooker played for New Zealand and Samoa, was part of Samoa's World Cup squad 3 years ago. Didn't play. I don't think he played in the final, but he was part of the setup when they got to the final. Had a spell in Super League with Huddersfield Giants, just one season, but played regularly then, and is, I think, potentially a good signing for Leeds. Effectively replaces Andy Ackers, who was released surprisingly at the end of the season and has joined Bradford Bulls. Opinions mixed on whether Leeds needed to bring in a new hooker. Jared O'Connor's effectively established himself as the first choice hooker last season, although it's not his natural position. He's played in the back row up until joining Leeds, really. He's an 80-minute player. How Danny Levi fits in to into the squad in that case remains to be seen. That's one of the mysteries that will be solved over pre-season and the start of next year. I think, as Brad Arthur, the coach, isn't keen on having a hooker on the bench. He doesn't really see the point. He'd rather his hooker played big minutes, maybe 80 minutes, which O'Connor's capable of doing. So interesting to see how that dynamic works out. Jared is out of contract at the end of 2026, along with a large number of Leeds players. So it'll be interesting to see how it affects his future. There's an argument you could maybe say, well, should Leeds have strengthened somewhere else and perhaps used young Joe Diskin, son of Matt, 2004 Grand Final winner, as the backup half. He's yet to play a Super League game, but he's a good prospect. It's one of those you never know until players have had a few games and settled in. I'm told he's settling in well. He's popular in the group. He's certainly a good player. I think Leeds might be looking for a bit more dynamism out of acting half. Jared's a very solid defender, but Levi's a specialist acting half, so they might seem as more of an attacking threat. But it's an interesting one. I'll have to wait and see how it works out. But I'm curious to know how they plan to rotate the two hookers they've got next season.
Yeah, Sam, Pete mentioned there that Leeds might have recruited in other areas of the field, was perhaps holes still to fill in their squad. How do you see the balance in that squad at the minute, and where would you look to add players if possible?
Yeah, I think it's a good squad. They've not recruited lots this off-season, but they've recruited in the majority of the places that they've needed. They needed to replace Bentley and Gannon, and they've done that with Matautia and O'Neill. I think they're still very light in the spines, particularly in the halves and the fullback depth. Chris Hankinson re-signed after joining on loan from Salford, but he's only really a fullback cover and a wing as well. But I think halves, Leeds' biggest problem now is backup in the halves. If Jake Connor or Brodie Croft goes down whenever or gets suspended, they've got no one to replace him. I know they've got a few youngsters. Georgie Brown's quite highly rated at Leeds, but again, he's not Super League proven. I just think if you were going to re-sign a backup, instead of Hankinson, I'd have used it on someone who could cover the halves as well. And I mean, it just makes Jackson Field's exit a little bit confusing if they're not planning on replacing him. But yeah, I think on the whole, the squad is looking quite good, and I think they will be up there again But again, it's just if that injury happens in the halves that they then can't replace, that's when they've got the problem.
Yeah, and just moving on, I guess the biggest move of the last week or so is Jackson Hastings returning to Super League. He's signed for St Helens, a 1-year deal. Sam C, is that the? I mean, look, is it St Helens struggled last year in attack? Is this the missing piece to the puzzle that Paul Rowley needs to make this St Helens side tick?
Yeah, I think it certainly could be. I think it kind of came out of nowhere as well. Really, I think they'd already released their the squad numbers, so it kind of looked that they were set, and then they've gone and brought in a former Man of Steel winner, so it can't hurt the chances. I think it's interesting to see if Hastings. I mean, you assume Hastings has to be a starter, so who's he starting alongside? I think we said it all last season. He's still got the Tristan Saylor problem of where do you put him at whose expense. I know you're a bit of an advocate for him to potentially be a backup 9. I think he played that role a couple of times last year. I think that kind of would suit him in terms of injecting pace off the bench. But I think, and it kind of also, you've got Johnny Lomax, who I think will turn, he's certainly 36, I think. Well, he might turn 37 next year. I'm not actually sure, but he's really, knocking on. And I think you're looking at, does Hastings' arrival harm the chances of George Whitby getting on the field? Because I'm a really big fan of him. I think he and another, if you got Whitby as a kicking half, and I think that could, over the course of the season, develop Hastings and Whitby. I think that'd be my preferred pairing if I was a Saints fan. Where that leaves Lomax and Saylor, I'm not sure, because I think Jack Wellesby's still your best fullback, but I think it's an option, and it's a quality option. So I think they've got all pre-season now to work out what is best, because it's something that Paul Wellens and the coaching staff last year just didn't work out all season. I think it was round 27 that they had Wellesby and Lomax in the halves for the first time or something. It's like, well, you can't head into a playoff system and not know who your best 6 and 7 are. So I think the fact that they've done it early is positive, and I think it could be really exciting to see. Really, you've obviously, Harry Robertson. Some people think he can transition into the halves as well. So I think there's a lot there. But I think if you're with a coach like Paul Rowley, as attacking minded as he is, I think he's the sort of person who can pick out the best bits and kind of work it out and nail it down. We also saw what Paul Rowley could do with just a complete mishmash last year. So I'm sure if anyone's got the answer, it's Paul Rowley. But I think round 1, that'll be quite exciting to see who is the preferred choice on the spine.
Yeah, Pete, what does it mean for Johnny Lomax moving forward now? I mean, he's played probably some of his best rugby over the last few years at 6, but as Sam mentioned, he's ageing. Do you think Lomax might be a man to drop to the bench and almost play that Moses and by sort of utility role?
You would think so, wouldn't you? That seems the logical thing. I mean, I didn't realise he was 36 or 37. Actually, he's been a good player for a long time, hasn't he? Obviously had difficulties this year, but he's coming towards the end of his career, and it does.
35, Johnny Lomax.
Yeah, I've edged him up a little bit there. Sorry about that, Johnny.
It does raise question marks over his future, but obviously that Saints need to be planning for what comes next. He's a very handy man to have in the squad, isn't he? You might say he's too good not to be playing on a regular basis, though. So it's a tricky one, but these are all issues that the new coach has got to sort out. It's why it's an ideal time to appoint Rowley at the start of pre-season when he's got 3 months to work on all these things. He's a smart guy. He watches a lot of rugby league, and he will be fully aware of all these issues. And I'm sure he's got contingency plans in place. So it's going to be very interesting to see how it works out. I think Saints will be a good team to watch again next year, with some of the players they've got. People like Hastings coming in, and they're attack-minded coach. I think he was a smart appointment for them.
Yeah, I mean, look, Sam B, does this make St Helens silverware contenders in 2026?
I think it's definitely too early to say that, but on paper you'd probably suggest they're going to improve. Yeah, look, Hastings obviously won the Man of Steel in 19 when Rowley, I know he wasn't the coach, but Rowley was at Salford at that point, and it's just another good addition. I think they've got Jacob Host in the forwards, David Clemmer. We don't know what position he's going to play. He's normally a prop, but he's got the 13 jersey. And I think that is another talking point. Who is going to replace Morgan Knowles in that position? Because I think they don't really have anyone in the squad that is his level. But I think whoever does take that starting loose forward role is going to be crucial in how Saints do, because as Knowles was for Saints in his time. I think there's a lot of factors to determine whether they're going to be title contenders, or silverware contenders. But yeah, the signs are certainly there, and if Rowley's got experience getting sides to grand finals that probably shouldn't done on paper, with Salford. But yeah, I think the signs are certainly there.
Yeah, they've signed Shorrocks as well from Salford. Look, Pete, you saw him, albeit very briefly, at Leeds last year. Do you think he could be a starting 13 option for them?
An option, yeah. I didn't see enough of him at Leeds. I think he only played a couple of games. But I do know that I spoke to Brad Arthur about him several times, and Brad rated him. He was impressed by what he brought to the group. I thought that Leeds might have. I mean, I don't know what the offer from Saints was or how that's worked out. Obviously, he's going to work with a coach he knows very well in Paul Rowley. But I think Leeds. I got the impression Leeds would have liked to have kept him. I'm not sure. Will he start every week? I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? I think he's certainly a very useful man to have in the squad. He's tough. He's got some skill. He's versatile. He can play 9, 13, and he's a decent pickup. I don't suppose it'll be on a fortune either on the salary cap. So it's, and the coach knows him. So I think it's a smart addition by Saints.
Yeah. Well, we'll wrap it up and leave it there. Then just another push to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us out if you could do that. And as promised in the last video, we're going to be here throughout the off season, throughout pre-season, and building into 2026 as well. So thanks for watching. Cheers, guys. Thanks for joining us. Please like and share, and we'll see you next week.